spells like that, in the red-green mirror match is a huge advantage. Often, the person who gets out in front is able to just leverage that advantage the entire way because the creatures hit so hard and are so much better at attacking than they are at blocking. Having access to Dreadbore, Ultimate Price, Doomblade, those sort of effects, gives Jund Monsters an edge in the mirror match and against similar decks.
We are underway here in the quarterfinals, and of course, just so you guys do know, we'll be bringing it back to the booth after game number 1 to ask our first of many trivia questions over the course of the day to give away some free Star City Games Premium. Patrick will have the first one for you. I'll do the second, and of course, he'll do the third. We'll take turns alternating with ridiculous questions. Might even play a little bit of, what's that, Nephilim?
Possibly.
Possibly. No guarantees here. As you do see, Ketter is going to play a Temple of Abandon here as his second land.
Though I believe this is a Nephilim light elimination round.
Unfortunately, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of 1 and 2 color decks.
Kind of lame, as Elvish Mystic is going to come across here into the red zone after Ketter does scry with his Temple of Abandon. For those of you guys wondering at home as well, we'll of course be updating as far as the match, as the matches go, who's won and who hasn't. We actually held the Ketter match as well as the Hable versus Biggers match, because that's going to be our backup match. We held those matches for you guys, so obviously we could watch them. As far as Nyberg and Cook, the Red Green Monsters mirror, those players are playing. Stepco and Silverman, the blue-white control mirror, they're also playing as well, as Ketter is going to play a Courser of Crewfix, turn over Reaper of the Wilds, and pass the turn back over to VanMeter, who we saw Mortars the Elvish Mystic last turn. Got to make sure the mana acceleration is slowed down.
Yeah, a lot of players, if you're not that familiar with Standard, may look at that play and say, well, why bother killing the mana elf with your mortars? Aren't there Stormbreath Dragon and these huge threats in the deck? It shows you how much the mana acceleration really matters. It's important to keep your opponent from getting off to really explosive starts, and Ken can theoretically ramp into Pelucranos or Reaper of the Wilds the following turn, which Mizium Mortars provides no answer to. So
Ketter currently sitting here with no 4th land, no black mana either. So he's got a Dreadbore, he's got a Reaper of the Wilds in his hand. Of course, he was not able to find the 4th land that he was looking for, and Temple of Abandon did not help either. So VanMeter kind of gets out of that turn alive, potentially moving ahead here as just Scavenging Ooze does remove that Elvish Mystic. So now that's become a 3-3, and Chris moves up a little bit of life back to 20.
And, you know, in matchups that are all about 4 and 5 mana creatures, it can often be summarized quite simply by who gets to 4 or 5 mana first. Looks like Chris has the ability to make land drops here, and Kent fumbling around a little bit.
So let's see if Chris wants to do anything special on this turn. He does have a Flesh Blood in his hand, also has a Gorkland Rampager. Looks like he has a Stormbreath Dragon hiding out in a couple of lands, so he's got a nice hand. And if he's able to break serve here, being the 8th seed, he was on the draw, that's huge for him in this matchup.
Yeah, he has the ability to kill the Courser this turn. I believe through Flesh. No, he doesn't have quite enough mana for that play just yet.
Well, he can Rampage.
Yeah,
he can Rampage or Flesh Blood.
Yes, yeah. He has enough mana for this turn. But now that he knows that Mizium Mortars is on top of the deck, it's not the best use of resources.
Yeah, it's not terribly appealing. Now, you know, one reason he may want to make that play, of course, is because he does know Mizium Mortars on top of the deck, so he knows that Ketter's not going to draw a land. There's not a ton that he can do on this turn, but instead he's just going to attack for 3, and he's going to play a Gorkland Rampager after taking 2 from that Stomping Ground. So Ketter is going to draw a card. It's a copy of Mizium Mortars. Domri Rad is the card that is turned over here. And you're going to see Gorkland Rampager bite the dust to that Mortars, which, you know, is obviously a good play, but that's just going to fuel the Scavenging Ooze even more. So you see the power of Scavenging Ooze in matchups like this. It's this 2 mana creature that just grows over time incrementally.
It's not the best suited card for the red-green mirror matches because it's often just about big stuff, and Ooze is rarely that big.
Yeah.
But occasionally the mirror match can be pretty removal-oriented, and Ooze can be good in those games.
Here's a Stomping Ground going to come to play on tap. It looks like VanMeter's going to go to the air and the ground with the Ooze. So it's going to be an attack here for 7. Ketter's going to be pushed down to 10 as he's going to draw that Domri. He's going to reveal Blood Crypt, so that's a step in the right direction. But he needs some help right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it looks like his hand is not very well suited to cast multiple spells in a turn, even now that he has black mana.
Yeah.
So,
you know, the fact that he can't cast a Dreadbore, and he's going to take 1 from this land, 2 from the Shock, and then gained 1 from the Courser. So he's going to go up to 9 total after this takes place. But, you know, he can actually cast a Dreadbore in his hand now, and he can also cast the Reaper, but Reaper's not particularly great in this this current situation, as Courser does reveal Scavenging Ooze off the top.
Yeah, it's the rough part about these mirror matches is often when one player gets behind, it's really hard to cast multiple spells in the same turn that are impactful. Jund Monsters is a little bit better at it because Dreadbore makes it more reasonable for you to be able to break serve, but Ken is certainly very far behind at this stage.
So Kent does play Dreadbore to take care of the Stormbreath Dragon. And now I think he's considering, do I attack with Courser of Crewfix or not, trying to figure out what exactly VanMeter can have. And he does decide to attack. He's going to put VanMeter down to 12 and just pass the turn back. Chris is going to quickly untap. He'll take a draw step. Again, we do know he has Flesh Blood in his hand. He also has a Gorklan Rampager, so this game might be over here.
Yeah, this looks like a combo turn here.
Yeah. So now here comes the Scavenging, who's in for 3. Let's make it more than 3. It's going to be 11 total after 2 Blood Rush activations. And Chris VanMeter is going to win game number 1 here over Ketter. Green-Red Monsters up a game over Jund Monsters. As we're going to bring it back to the booth here for you guys with Patrick Sullivan and Cedric Phillips, because it is trivia time, the first of many. I feel like it's been a while since I've done one of these things. Almost, actually a little over a month since we've actually given away some trivia, myself and you in the booth. But as we do, we ask you guys to sign on to Twitter. Hashtag your answers with the hashtag of SCG Premium. Make sure you're also following at SCG Live. This guy's going to ask you a question, and you guys will answer it with those hashtags. And the winner, which we will draw from the group of winners, does win 3 months of Star City Games Premium. So, again, it's about accuracy, not speed, because we'll be announcing the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal round. And I'll let you fire away.
So we've been talking a lot about Jund Monsters and how the deck list is different from Red-Green Monsters. We talked a lot, and of course, it's the addition of black.
Yes.
We talked a lot about Dreadbore being the black spell that's been added to the main deck. There is a black creature. It's actually a green-black creature. There's one in the main deck. Name that creature. So, again, tweet your answer at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium, and one person will be selected at random for 3 free months of Star City Games Premium content.
All right, we wish you guys the best of luck. As we will take a look at the sideboards here now between Ketter and VanMeter. Since Ketter will be on the play, and I'm obviously quite familiar with this deck, we'll take a look here. He's got 2 copies of Rakdos' Return, 2 Golgari Charm, 2 Abrupt Decay, 2 Ultimate Price, 2 Gruul Charm, 2 more Dreadbores, a Xenagos God of Revels, a Rurik Thar, and a Sire of Insanity. In this matchup, if I am in Kent's seat, I of course wanted to board in 2 more Dreadbores, 2 more copies of Ultimate Price, and then a copy of Xenagos God of Revels. Xenagos has a huge role in this matchup. It's a fantastic one of them. And you just want more additional removal spells. The card I like to board out here is Courser of Crewfix, just because it's the worst card that you have in your deck, given the context of the matchup of it being about mana acceleration, killing their creatures, and having big dumb idiots to kill them with. It fills that role perfectly. So it's a pretty natural swap, and we'll see if that's the swap that he chooses to make.
Yeah, I was talking a little bit to Kent yesterday after he top 8'd in between rounds, and he said that for these sort of matchups, he likes removing Corso first and then Scavenging Ooze second. The matchup is about little creatures that make mana and then big stuff. So all the stuff that's in the middle gets outclassed too quickly, and so those are the cards you're most likely to see removed. On Chris's side, you see 4 Mistcutter Hydras, a Destructive Revelry, 2 Plummets, 2 Shocks, 2 Rorik Thars, a Chandra Pyromancer, a Garrett Caller Beast, Flesh Blood, and a Mizium Mortars. Doesn't feel like he's really got a lot going on for this matchup. I like the additional Mizium Mortars. I like the additional Flesh Blood. But the rest of his sideboard doesn't strike me as being very good. I don't like the additional Planeswalkers because if he's on the back foot, it's just very hard to defend them against the size of Kent's creatures. If Chris is on the play, I think there's more of an argument for something like Chandra to allow you to power through blockers. On the draw, I think it's too hard to get into an advantageous board position with those cards, and the rest of his sideboard is not really appropriate for this matchup.
The one card I don't particularly love coming in from VanMeter is Mizium Mortars, just because a lot of the cards from the Jund Monsters deck has 5 toughness, and you're boarding out a card that actually does have 4 toughness in Courser. So really your best Mizium Mortar target is going to be Stormbreath Dragon after you've been hit, or an Elvish Mystic. Now you can argue that just having a card to take care of Elvish Mystic is certainly worth it, but just with how the deck is composed, those are really the only 2 targets for you to take care of. So I'm not a huge fan of Mizium Mortars from the other side. Like, I'm not scared of that card if I'm playing Jund Monsters.
Well, Stormbreath Dragon is still an issue.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, certainly something worth taking care of. Does that mean you want additional mortars? You know, there's arguments being made on either side, I think.
Yeah, if we're working under the assumption that Courser of Crewfix is just not well suited for these games, and you want to get all 4 of them out of your deck, then you might have to bring in some less efficient cards.
Yeah. That's completely fair.
I do not believe Mortars is ideal for the reason you're saying. In the red-green mirror match, I think it's a little bit different, but because you're looking at additional 5 toughness creatures in the Jund monster list, Mortars certainly gets a little bit worse.
So we will see how both players do opt to sideboard. And again, when we do have updates from all of our other matches that are taking place, we will let you guys know so we can follow along. If you guys are on our coverage page, of course, you can see the matchups that are taking place between Jonathan Habel and Dustin Biggers. That's Green Red Monsters versus Mono Blue. You've got Mike Nyberg and Aaron Cook. That's a Green Red Monsters mirror. You've got Benjamin Stepka versus Phil Silverman. That's a blue-white control mirror, which you don't see in our top 8 or any copies of Pack Rat, of Life Bans, how many of these black cards, and with how popular Green Red has been over the couple of last opens, Nashville and here, you might be a little bit surprised to not see any decks with Life Bane Zombie or, Mono Black Devotion not really doing well in this particular tournament.
Yeah, the metagame may have shifted, quite honestly, and all these decks playing Devour Fleshes and Bile Blights as removal spells may actually need to move to something like Doomblade.
Yeah.
The metagame may have shifted that much where I understand when you're in the world of a ton of mono black mirror matches, it's hard to justify main deck Doomblade, but if the metagame looks like this with a ton of red-green monsters, and Nashville was very similar in the composition of the top 16, it's possible the mono black players just haven't adapted their removal spells the way they need to.
We do have a quick update here. Dustin Biggers does defeat Jonathan Habel in game 1, so Mono Blue Devotion is up a game over Green Red Monsters. Really unsurprisingly, it's a really good matchup for Mono Blue. And we have seen Dustin Biggers on the Open Series circuit some here. Seen him play Mono Blue before to some success, so very familiar with the deck.
Yeah, and I remember watching VanMeter and Brian Brondwin play Red Green Monsters, I believe at the Indianapolis Open. Both of them made a fairly deep run in that event, with Brian, I believe, actually top 8ing. And every time they played against Mono Blue on camera, it just seemed really rough.
So we'll see both players taking a look at the opening hand here. Again, Ketter's going to be on the play as VanMeter was able to break serve. So we'll see if he can get up a game, tie this up here as he is down a game against Green Red Monsters. It looks like he's happy with his starting 7 as VanMeter's going to take a look at his hand. Both players are happy, we're underway, and he's got an Elvish Mystic again, so he does have acceleration, as he did the last game, as VanMeter's going to draw a Sylvan Caryatid for the turn. And Chris saying, yeah, that card's good. That card is very important. Stomping Ground going to come and play tap, pass the turn back. Ketter will take a draw step here. He's got a Temple of Abandon. Going to take a look at the top card. He's unhappy with it. Going to place it to the bottom. Follow-up looks like another Elvish Mystic. So if VanMeter was on the plan, just again, with a bit of a smile, says, yeah, you killed the first one last time, but if you mortars this one, I'm A-okay. And so he'll attack for 1, put VanMeter down to 19. VanMeter's got a Sylvan Caryatid, so both players accelerating appropriately.
Yeah, and given that Kent had a second mana elf, it's much better for Chris to have his own mana accelerant rather than kill one of Kent's.
Yeah. So Ketter's going to put that top card to the bottom. He's going to tap 4 mana. Let's see what the 4 mana spell is going to be. It is Pool of Chronos, World Eater, and that one is quite good in this matchup. 5 toughness is key, but also that 5 power is really, really a big deal. That's a huge creature, and it can basically take down anything in a fight.
And you can see the difference between Gen Monsters and Green Red Monsters here is that Ken has access to cards like Dreadbore to kill Chris's large creatures. Chris has no such tools himself.
Yeah. And the key here is, you play a big creature and then you just get out in front and you start just killing their stuff. That's the really important thing is now you see a Pool of Chronos on the other side here from VanMeter. So both players do have their 5/5 legendary creature in play as Ketter will take a draw step. But Ketter is staring exactly what you mentioned. He has Dreadbore at the ready. He's going to take 2 and go down to 18. Very efficient way of taking care of Pool of Chronos and getting in with all of his creatures. So he'll be able to deal VanMeter 7 points of damage and put Chris down to 12, and he's immediately under the gun now.
Yeah, and that was really important too because Kent's on all of these mana elves, getting to untap with Pool of Chronos there could be horrible for Kent.
Yeah. Could be really, really bad, but did have removal spell in Dreadbore as VanMeter's draw a card. You see his hand right now. He's got Domri. He's got Gorklan Rampager. He also has a copy of Xenagos, God of Revels, but you can just see how far behind he is right now.
Yeah.
That's the big issue. And if Kent has another removal spell for a giant creature, there's almost no catching up, and the game's over before it started.
It's not even clear if Kent needs a removal spell at this point.
This is true as well.
Chronos is just, it's too large. There's too many blocks that it breaks up.
Mm-hmm.
It's very challenging for Chris to answer this card.
And you see Chris has moved Xenagos, God of Revels, to the forefront of his hand, and it's just like, do you really want to take a turn off to cast that card? But you really, he's got some other options. Is that the best one? And try to craft a more interesting game plan? Again, not entirely sure. But I am sure with the number 4 player on our leaderboard. We'll figure out what the right play is to get him back into this game.
He might be far enough behind at this point where he's contemplating something like Stormbreath Dragon, say go with no attacks.
Sure. Not his favorite play, I'm sure, but if it's the play he's got to make, and you see he's smiling here, I'm sure Kent and him are having some back and forth as they are 2 talkative players. And here you see Kent chatting as usual. He's a fun guy. If you haven't seen his deck deck, you should definitely check it out. He's loving Magic right now, but I would be too if I were him.
That is the body language of a man with the mortars in his hand.
Oh, absolutely. That is true. I mean, yeah, you go ahead and play a 4 toughness creature, because I will overload. I've got 3 red.
Stormbreath Dragon, man, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Mythic Rare, so good. That is such a good card. You see VanMeter really taking his time here. He knows he's in trouble. As you see Kent patiently waiting. Come to whatever decision you decide, my friend. Is now Stormbreath Dragon's going to come into the red zone. So VanMeter's going to put Ketter down to 14. And we're racing, it looks like. Or at least attempting to. As Ketter's going to quickly untap. He'll take a look at his top card. You see Mortars. He has a Mutavault now, which is actually pretty important as he quickly taps that 6 mana. He's going to overload Mizium Mortars. So that's going to be a 2-for-1 very, very quickly. You see VanMeter is going to lose his 2 creatures. Ketter's going to come in for 6. That'll put VanMeter down to exactly 6. So we're looking at basically a 2-turn clock here as Chris is going to untap and take a draw.
And again, Chris not really well equipped to beat Paulo Kronos when the opponent's on the front foot.
Yeah. It's so important in this matchup. The dynamics of the matchup are really, really interesting as Chris is going to concede this game after drawing Xenagos. Because it's so important to get ahead, but it also depends on what threat you get ahead with. And Paulo Kronos is easily the best one.
Yeah.
Because as good as the card as Stormbreath Dragon is, both players have access to Mortars in their deck. So, you can't rely on just casting Mortars to get the job done. Now, if you imagine this matchup that Stormbreath Dragon is Thunderbolt Hellkite, you could have one of those starts where you just play a turn 4 Thunderbolt Hellkite and just take that thing to victory because it's a 4-turn clock on its own, and it would be Mortars proof. Now, obviously, that card's not legal, but just as an example of how important 5 toughness is.
Yeah, it does seem like the important flashpoint in the matchup.
Yeah. It's a really, really, really big deal. And, Mortars does play an interesting role in this matchup, again, just because the fact that you can overload it and kill the mana accelerants really sets your opponent back. And there are draws that either side can have where they just play a Mystic and then a Caryatid, and then they're able to overload Mortars on turn 4, and then there's no catching up from that. Yeah. Unless they, for whatever reason, the person who overloaded Mortars just doesn't have some big threat. Assuming they have a big threat to go along with that, the game's basically over.
Because it's so, just because it's, the deck is so bad at playing while it's behind and so good while playing while it's out in front, it can't even handle early overloaded Mortars just killing mana creatures.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to, you don't even have to get any of the juicy targets.
Yeah.
Just killing an Elvish Mystic and a Sylvan Caryatid sets the other deck so far behind that if you have any sort of leverage, that's going to be enough.
Yeah, no, mana is super, super important in these green mirrors, as we have seen in the past. As we do take a look here at a couple of updates, Jonathan Hable does tie it up against Dustin Bigger. So Green and Monsters has evened things up against Mono Blue Devotion. And then we see here that Phil Silberman playing Blue-White. He's your number 2 seed. Good friend of Ken Ketter is up a game over Benjamin Stepka. And I think we felt that was going to be a matchup that maybe favored Phil just because he does have an Elixir of Immortality. Mm-hmm. And with how long Game 1's going to go in that matchup, again, remember, we started coverage here, even though we weren't able to go live at 8 o'clock as intended because of technical difficulties. We started that match at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's almost 9. So the Game 1 just ended after just a long, drag-it-out affair. So we'll see who ends up taking that one down. Maybe they get a little bit crafty with their sideboarding.
Yeah, it's just hard to get too fancy. Players have access to deck lists. And so, for example, we saw a blue-white mirror match where one player sided into Soldier of the Pantheon as a plan in the post-board games. Mm-hmm. Now, he ended up losing that game. But the point remains that his opponent might have been caught a little bit off guard by that.
Sure.
In the post-board games where you have access to deck lists, it's very hard to craft a plan that comes out of nowhere.
We do see Ketter taking a look at the deck list one more time. Always good to reference exactly what the options are that are available, just in case. Don't want to be overconfident. As we do have a quick update here for you guys. Well, Aaron Cook does defeat Mike Nyberg 2-1, so the 6 seed goes through. Break serve.
Not an easy thing to do in that mirror match.
Yes, not at all. A little bit surprising. Maybe some mulligans were involved. Who knows? But either way, Aaron Cook is going to win the match. He'll be playing the winner again of Benjamin Stepka and Phil Silberman. Currently, Silberman in the lead there, 1-0. Either way, Green Red Monsters are going to be playing against Blue-White Control.
Yeah, and congratulations to Aaron. A great tournament thus far. He ended Adrian Sullivan's stream yesterday with a win, giving Adrian his second loss in round 10, and then was able to intentionally draw into the top 8.
I really like the composition of this standard format right now. You know, with how things have changed here, with the ability to be able to beat Pack Rat, I think it took a little while for people to figure it out. And also with the printing of a card like Bio Blight certainly helping for the Mono Black Devotion Mirror. But I think people have realized that the way you beat Pack Rat is kind of you just overpower it.
That's the best way. You have to be way faster than it or overpower it. Those are the two recipes, basically. Our standard format wasn't really well equipped to do either of those things. I feel pre-Born of the Gods. Now this green-red monster deck just had such a huge upshot in power.
Yeah.
That it's possibly shifting the metagame around. Like I said, I think these mono black players who are showing up with last month's removal suite, maybe they've added a couple Bile Blights to their main deck or sideboard. I don't know if that gets it done against this new iteration of green-red monsters.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it does either. I mean, people are building their decks with Bile Blight in mind, with Drown in Sorrow in mind. Neither of those cards are very impressive against green-red monsters. Of course, you think of Courser, Pulachronos, Dragon, Reaper, or Core Clan Rampager. Again, Bile Blight not really doing anything against those cards. You see Blue-White Control, obviously. They have crafted a game plan to be able to beat Mono Black. You know, now not to say Mono Black doesn't have tools, because they certainly do, but it looks like the Blue-White Control decks have leveled up in their thinking and in their deck building, and it seems like they have, you know, created a strategy that is cohesive against black-based decks.
Yeah, Mono Black, in almost every matchup, one of his creatures is very good. Pack Rat against Mono Blue is exceptional. Desecration Demon against decks like Green Red Monsters is excellent, and so forth. Night Veil Spectre in the mirror match can be very good. You know, they always have one bullet creature. Against Blue-White, none of their creatures really matter. It's basically a deck built around Duress, Thoughtseize, and card drawing. The creatures are purely incidental. And so the Mono Black deck loses a lot of value and percentage points in that matchup because none of its creatures really matter. One of them kills the Blue-White opponent in the games that Mono Black wins, but you're not really looking to draw any creature in particular.
See if VanMeter is going to keep his hand. He'll be on the play here as Ketter does mulligan very, very quickly. So he'll be with at least 6 cards here. We'll see if they'll be more or less moving forward. But yeah, I mean, just to take a look at this top 8, of course, we have, if you count Ketter's deck, it's just a Green-Red Monsters deck. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Green-Red Monsters decks. 5. And again, talking with Nick Miller over the course of yesterday, he said, hey, it's going to be tough to get some varied feature matches here because there are so many Green Monsters decks at the top tables. And, you know, maybe sometimes players embellish on how many there actually are. Well, obviously Nick was not doing that because 5 of this deck made top 8. You've got 1 Mono Blue Devotion, which of course we saw win in Nashville. And you've got 2 Blue-White Control decks. But, you know, the times of when Mono Black and Mono Blue were running rampant and winning every tournament, those days may be behind us.
Well, I don't know what's exactly going on with Mono Blue Devotion's representation. I, if anything, would anticipate an uptick in that deck as it won Nashville and is the one deck in the format that I feel is very naturally favored against Green-Red Monsters. So that's actually a deck that I would imagine gets a resurgence in popularity, if anything.
Yeah. You see Ketter taking another mulligan here, so he'll be going down to 5 cards as the bearded one can't help but smile and laugh maybe a little bit at things breaking his way. Again, Chris VanMeter, number 4 on our Open Series leaderboard. You guys can definitely go to StarCityGames.com and check that out, how to qualify for the Players' Championship, how to qualify for our Invitationals. That's when Season 1 ends at the conclusion of our Charlotte Invitational at the back end of March. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens here with Chris. This tournament is a very, very big deal for him. Again, making the 12-hour drive over here, starting the tournament 1-1-1 in an 11-round tournament, rallying off all of those wins in a row, 8 of them to be able to make top 8. And now he's playing against an opponent in Ken Ketter, who's been playing some great Magic over the past, 3 months with 2 Open Series finals appearances, a couple PTQ finals appearances before losing there, starting 9-0 this weekend. He's got him on the ropes on a mulligan of 5.
Although this is one matchup, in my opinion, where the mulligans, they always matter, but they matter less here. Because the games are so fast and so violent, the loser almost always dies with cards in their hand. So it's about having the right cards, not so much having the raw card count.
VanMeter starts off with an Elvish Mystic. He's going to bash for 1, and now here's another Elvish Mystic. So he is the one that's accelerating this go-around, and he's got the beautiful one-of bullet in his hand. He has Xenagos, God of Revels in his hand, one of the best cards in this matchup, as Ketter is going to play a Blood Crypt on tap. Now here's the Sylvan Caryatid, so he's got a little bit of acceleration at the cost of a little bit of life, and he passes the turn back to VanMeter, who draws a Temple of Abandon. He's going to play an untapped land, and there is Xenagos, God of Revels, to pass back. And things get really scary now.
Chris's pace of play is picked up too. You can tell he knows that he's quite advantaged from this position.
Let's see what this is going to be. It looks like we're going to see a Domri. We are. Temple of Abandon did set the top of the deck, so you have to imagine there's probably a creature coming. And there is. There's a Pulachronos. Now, if there's one card that can catch you up, it is that one, but that Xenagos is a terrifying card.
Almost any of Chris's high-impact creatures at this point are just lethal, and you see him with Pulachronos in hand.
Yeah. Didn't know that Chris had that, but he does, and that's effectively a 10-10 right now. I actually think he can turn on Devotion for Xenagos, too. As you see Temple of Abandon, he's going to take the top card and put that one to the bottom. Yeah, because he can cast Elvish Mystics. That's going to be Devotion 5. Pulachronos is Devotion 7. That's an attack for 16.
It's not a horrible fourth turn.
That's your above average fourth turn.
It's not bad.
That's what that is right there. His Ketter is going to untap. He'll take a draw. Oh! Yeah, that is going to do it. Chris VanMeter is going to break serve and win this match over Kent Ketter. Defeats the #1 seed. He'll be moving on. Green-Red Monsters will be playing against, you guessed it, Green-Red Monsters, because Jonathan Abel was able to defeat Dustin Biggers in two games to 1, excuse me. So you've got VanMeter and you've got Hable, 2 Green Monsters players going at it. And this is the tournament for Pulachronos, apparently.
And now the big question is this going to be one of the rare semifinals where our Sphinx's Revelation pilot is the good guy in the terms of the story of the tournament?
Boy, is that rare. I tell you. Congratulations to Chris. I mean, congratulations to both these players, honestly. Yeah. Both have been on great runs, both chasing Open Series points for the Players' Championship at the end of the year. Ketter with a 9-0 start to this weekend, not able to make it to the finals again and possibly hoist the trophy, but he's got nothing to hang his head about.
No, and I'm at this point, I would really like Kent to get his Open Series trophy sooner rather than later with the results he's been putting up here.
Yeah.
But a great start to the season, and I understand the frustration potentially of getting so close so many times in a row. But I think that if Ken is able to parlay all of the success into an invite to the Players' Championship at the end of the year, he's not going to mind too much.
Yeah. On the other side of our bracket, 3 versus 6, again, Aaron Cook did win that match over Mike Nyberg. So you see Green Monsters pushing through there as well. And then